All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Financial Frontiers with Bruin Finance Society, the podcast where we explore the world of business and finance and is your home for all finance-related topics and news here at UCLA. Today, we will have the incredible honor of speaking with William E. Simon Jr.
Hi, Francisco, and everybody out there. It's so nice to be here.
Professor Simon is a co-founder of the Benjamin Graham Value Investing Program here at UCLA, an Assistant Adjunct Professor in both the School of Law and the Department of Economics, and a highly accomplished investor. His expertise spans from his time as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York to leading investment firms and wealth management initiatives. Professor Simon was also the 2002 Republican gubernatorial nominee in California and ran against former California Governor Gray Davis. He has served as co-chairman of William E. Simon & Sons, Partner Emeritus at Simon Quick Advisors, and a trustee and advisor to multiple organizations. Today we'll dive deep into his views on value investing, leadership, financial education, and the evolving world of wealth management. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first question I have for you, Professor Simon. The Benjamin Graham Value Investing Program at UCLA is a one-of-a-kind initiative. What inspired you to co-found this program, and how do you see it shaping the next generation of investors?
Well, Ben Graham was Warren Buffett's professor, and his area of expertise was something that he founded, and it was called, or is called, value investing. And that's the kind of investing I've been doing for many years. So thinking about ways that I might pay it forward and talk about value investing to the next generation of investors, nothing I could think of would be better than to teach a course in value investing here at UCLA, where Benjamin Graham once taught.
Great. Thank you so much. And, a lot of things have changed throughout the years. The financial world has evolved significantly since, Benjamin Graham first introduced value investing. How do you think modern financial markets challenge or reinforce Graham's original principles?
Well, you asked two questions, which I'm happy to answer both, but I want to make sure I get them correctly.
Go ahead.
The challenge is that are present in today's markets for traditional value investors is it's very hard to employ the exact tools that Ben Graham recommended. But that doesn't mean that today's investor can't employ other tools that are in the same spirit as value investing. So what do I mean by that? In the same spirit? Well, I mean that value investing, if you were going to say, how do you summarize that in one or two sentences? Ben Graham said there's only two rules. One, don't lose money. Two, don't forget rule one.
Great. And those two rules, would you say, are very practical and something that us students, college students, should take away and use in our daily lives?
Oh yes, absolutely, Francisco. One of the things that we emphasize in our program here at UCLA are behaviors and attitudes and attributes that you learn in value investing, but they'll do you a lot of good if you put them into effect in other areas of your life.
Got it. Thank you so much. Very practical information. Moving on to kind of more investing strategies that have become more relevant in modern times, have been increasingly growing. We have the rise of passive investing and ETFs. So my question for you here is, what do you think about this increase in passive investing in ETFs compared to traditional value investing approaches?
Well, I think it's great. I think that the rise of index funds, which is their nickname, is very consistent with the principles of value investing. One of the main principles of value investing is stay within your circle of competence. In other words, stick with what you know. Now, if it turns out that you think you'd like to be an investor in maybe some area that you've never been involved with before, sounds interesting, the stock market's not a place to find out who you are. Rather, the stock market is a place where people that have a competence in that area should take a look intensively at companies that are in that area. Now, Ben Graham said in 1947, so almost 90 years ago, that if you're not willing to do that, then you should invest in an index fund and let somebody else who is a full-time professional in the investing business, let them recommend stocks.
I see. And given that, would you recommend newcomers to the stock market that kind of strategy of investing through index funds?
Well, I would recommend that, but if they have an interest in the stock market, if they have an interest in learning about companies, they might focus on one or two companies and see if they can't get knowledgeable about them, and they could employ the value investing techniques. Have a margin of safety, have a competitive advantage. So I'm drinking a Diet Coke right now. Now, there are some competitors, but nobody has done as well as Coke. And why is that? I don't know. It's got a secret sauce, and it's probably in a safe somewhere in Atlanta, their headquarters, and nobody knows what it is, or at least if they do, they haven't told me.
That's funny. There's a lot of different competitors in the soda beverage industry, and Coke has been around for a long time, for generations. So they're doing something right here.
Exactly.
So I want to add on. So of course we have the rise of passive investing in ETFs, index funds, etc. Now I want to delve into the rise of AI, algorithmic trading, and data-driven investing. Do you think traditional value investing strategies will be disrupted in these areas?
Well, AI, Francisco, is outside my area of competence. So whatever you're going to hear come out of my mouth about AI, I have to caution everybody that I don't know much about AI. And but having said that, I think there's always going to be room for people to be prudent, to take approaches that will generally lead to adequate investment results, but without much risk. Now, maybe at some point, artificial intelligence will have companies that are not just amazing, but they make money year after year after year. And one of the things that Warren Buffett has said is if you look at whatever is the new industry, whether it's airplanes, whether it's railroads, whether it's cars, inventions that people said will change the world. And they did. But if you added up the profits and losses of the companies in those industries, pretty much they would cancel out, meaning the process of competition winnows down the companies that are not that well run. So I wouldn't think you'd want to invest in AI right now. Rather wait and see which of the companies are the Google of the next generation. Now, Google, thanks to artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and their search engines, might no longer be Google. Maybe it's ChatGPT, maybe it's something else I don't even know the name of. Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's partner, once said that Google has the greatest competitive advantage he's ever seen in 60 years of investing. Now, he said that a couple of years ago. And already people are saying, as a result of artificial intelligence, bye-bye Google.
Yeah, there's just, it's constantly evolving. There's so many, changes going on within these industries. And, similar to what we were just speaking about with, Coke and Coke's competitors, like they have, stood out and stand against, time, test of time. And it's interesting to see, because of how new AI is and, these evolving technologies, to see who will, stay on top. Because, we have ChatGPT, we have all these other different AI services and stuff that's continuing to come out. It's really interesting to see how that will play out over the decades, and I'm really curious to see how that plays out and what that means for the future of current investors and the future investors as well.
Me too.
Yeah. So let's dive more into your career. So as we know, your career spans a lot of different areas in different sectors. Law, finance, politics, education, just to name a couple. What are the biggest leadership lessons you've learned across these different fields?
Keep going. 2 words, keep going. And number one, you're not always going to know what you're good at until you're in the frying pan, until you're in the crucible, until you're tested, you're challenged. And it may be that you're better than you think, or it may be you're worse than you think. So the first thing is self-examination. Keep your eyes open. See what feels right. Sometimes you're naturally good at something, and sometimes you're not. I really wanted to play professional tennis. The problem was I wasn't good enough, but I was pretty good. So self-examination is key. And when it turns out you enjoy something and you're good at it, keep going. Maybe the expression, when the wind's at your back, run. Don't walk. Don't take your gifts for granted.
I totally agree. I just had a lecture earlier today, actually. My professor was saying, back in his day, it was a lot more unacceptable to, you get a job right after college, and you kind of have to stick with it. And that's something that was emphasized during his time. But in more modern times, currently, it's actually the other way around now, and it's becoming more acceptable to try new things, try new jobs, and kind of just explore, what's your what your interests are. You know, there's a lot out there, especially in the world of finance and business. There's a lot of different financial careers that one can go into, and as a young college student myself, 20-year-old, I think that's super important, is to find something that you really are passionate about and something that you're really interested in, and as you said, keep going, because that's when I'd say the best of you comes out. And given that, I want to ask this question. As I mentioned, as a 20-year-old college student myself, I'm curious to know if you could go back in time and give advice to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Don't care what other people think. Some of my biggest mistakes were listening to other people tell me I was wrong, and it turned out they had maybe some other reason for saying that. It's not my business what other people think of me. Now, it's taken me 40 years to get there, Francisco, so I'm not suggesting that any of us are going to get there at age 20. So if I had said that to myself at age 20, I might not have listened. Probably I wouldn't have listened, because when I was 20, I really thought I knew everything. And each year after that, I realized I knew less and less and less. And now I'm 73, I'll be 74 in June. And I don't think there's a whole hell of a lot that I really do know.
Yeah, that is great advice for all these young college students that are listening to the podcast currently, and that's something that I try to apply to my life as well. Don't ever give up just because of what other people think. It's really important to just focus on yourself and focus on your goals, and regardless of what anyone says, just pursue your passions and just be ambitious with it. So great, thank you so much for that. So as we also know, you ran for governor of California back in 2002, which must have been a unique experience, I'm sure. How did that challenge your leadership skills in ways that your career in finance didn't?
Well, I knew you were going to ask this question, so I had a little chance to think about it, and I'm glad that I had a chance. I would say a couple things. First, there's nothing like being in an environment where you will be criticized publicly. So I said a moment ago, try not to care about what other people think of you. Well, that's a lesson that I really learned when I ran for governor at age 50. And I have a story about that. So I won the nomination of the Republican Party, which very few people expected. And I got very close to the incumbent, Gray Davis, lost by 5. And after I lost, I went to work, and my wife Cindy called me and said, "Can you pick up a prescription on your way home?" I said, "Sure." So I did. I was walking to my car with the prescription, and I was standing at a red light, and there was a lady standing next to me who had no raincoat. She was drenched, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, I'm just great." I said, "Oh, good. How come?" And she said, "Because that crook Simon lost yesterday." What do you think of that, Francisco? And I looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I get it." Well, I then walked across the street to my car. The day before, 3.1 million people had voted for me. and 3.4 million people had voted for Gray Davis. Now, if only 10% of the people that voted for Gray Davis, 10% of 3.4 million people, 340,000 people, if they thought I was a crook, I'd never have the chance to change their opinion. I couldn't call them. I couldn't write them letters. I couldn't. And I said, I'm okay. I got 3.1 million. He got 3.4. And I'm going to have to be happy with that.
Sometimes in life, you won't get the results that you expect. But it's important to just keep going. You don't give up.
You don't give up.
You don't give up at all. And, you have a lot of really unique experiences, a lot of, great accomplishments. One of them being you co-founded William E. Simon & Sons long time ago with your father and brother. I'm curious to know what are some key takeaways from working in a family business, and what advice do you have for others looking to do the same?
Well, a family business, as you might imagine, in the beginning is run by people in the family, and they know each other. And sometimes there's baggage, and you got to look over that. My dad was a very successful businessman, but he had a temper, and he could be tough. So my brother and I, we were very close, still are. We decided, no matter what Dad said to us, we would overlook it, and we wouldn't throw each other under the bus. We agreed that unless it was absolutely necessary. If Dad said, "Who told you that?" I wouldn't say my brother Pete. But then if he said, "I want to know who told me that or told you that," I would say, "Well, it was Pete." Sometimes you got to save your skin.
Yeah.
So you recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of your partners. So in this case, it was my brother Pete, it was my dad, and it was me. And we had a great time most of the time. Not all the time. But Dad had a rule, and that was if one of the three of us feels strongly, we will go their way. And somebody once asked me, well, what happens if you all feel strongly? And, those are the risks you take. But it has been a wonderful experience. Dad died 25 years ago now, or almost 25 years. Pete's still alive, I'm still alive. And, our company is going in different directions. And today it's in a different business than the business it was in at the start.
I'm curious, what are the key takeaways that you learned from this business in particular? How did that carry over throughout the rest of your career?
Well, I would say that one of the things related to what I said before about not caring what other people think of you is be satisfied that you're doing the best you can do. So always try to be the best you could be. And the second thing is you're not going to hit a home run every day. And, nobody does. No matter how much you think other people look better than you, don't compare your outsides, or don't compare somebody else's outsides where they look great, they're dressed up, they sound terrific, with your insides. The insides that we all have that say you're not going to do well, don't try that, it's stupid. Just try to forget about that.
Indeed, comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
There you go. I like that. I hadn't heard that before. Comparison is the thief of joy. Did you invent that?
No, I did not, but I wish I did.
Who said it? Abraham Lincoln or Mark Twain?
I have no idea, actually, but it's a pretty common saying, and it's very true, as much as as you described it just now.
Good.
It's always important to, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, to just focus on yourself, and never let anyone say otherwise about your goals and the passions that you're pursuing. So that's super important, especially for the younger audience listening in. Great. So next thing I want to talk about is ESG, so environmental, social, and governance topics. Pretty big right now. So I want to know, in terms of investing, right? As a value investor, how do you view the balance between financial return and social responsibility?
I'm skeptical of the connection. I think investing is all about making money. It's not about some of the things that are important under ESG. Now, some people say that it should be. I'm not going to argue with that, but generally, if you are focused solely on your return, that's going to drive your actions. If you're not focused on your return could suffer. Now, ESG is relatively recent, meaning last 10, 15 years. There's not really a track record of what the connection is. When it first came around, we did not invest in ESG funds. And we may not have the opportunity for the next couple of years because of this administration that's in Washington. They're very skeptical of ESG. So a lot of the firms, some of which shall remain nameless, like Goldman Sachs, they got rid of all their ESG stuff. But it probably will come back when another administration gets in. So I would say I'd like to see the proof of how you can make a great return and focus on ESG. I don't know how to do it. I never learned how to do it, and now I'm too old to learn. So I'm sticking with what got me here today, talking with you.
Right. What you're familiar with, have the competence of. I remember that's exactly what you were saying earlier. Yeah. Great. So I want to turn the attention now more towards some practical steps for our audience that are currently tuning in to the podcast here. If a student wanted to get themselves involved in value investing today, what practical steps would you recommend for that student?
I'd recommend they read a lot. You can start with The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. It was published.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. And it's still selling.
Yeah.
So, and then just keep reading after that. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, most value investors read 4 to 5 hours a day. And I'm sure you do that. I'm sure right after breakfast you go right to the library, right? And stay there until, midnight, right?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah, that's very true. Especially during midterms, finals week. But in the library.
Warren does that every day, even when there's no final.
Yeah.
So you can learn a lot by reading. You can learn a lot by listening. There's people that have been through so many different, stages of their life and made so many decisions, good and bad. I think it's good to have humility, especially when you're younger. It's hard when you're younger because you generally feel like you know it all. And people that have, made mistakes in their life, which I'm one of them, you get a little more cautious, and you realize that humility is a great thing.
100%. I agree with that. Great. Thank you so much. So I want to talk about financial literacy now. So at the time of recording this podcast episode, Bruin Finance Society just had a collaboration with another organization on campus called Financial Literacy Group. And I want to ask you this question because financial literacy is a major issue, ongoing issue in the U.S. Do you believe universities and institutions are doing enough to equip students with practical financial knowledge?
No.
No.
Yep. They're not doing enough.
Not doing enough.
I taught a course here. I feel that way. And I collaborated with the chairman of the econ department, Kathleen McGarry. Together we taught a course in financial literacy. And I just think it's a basic skill, like learning how to speak publicly, learning how to write. Financial literacy, we're all going to, hopefully, have to deal with issues related to finance during our lives, even if it's not our career. So there's some pretty simple lessons, and it's like playing a sport.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's something super practical that I recommend everyone listening in to, do some research on it because it really is super important, and it's in a lot of aspects of our lives. And, a lot of us, especially college students, are taking on a lot of debt. That is a really big thing because, universities and colleges are not cheap, pretty expensive. So I think it's super important.
They are.
Yeah, I think it's super important that students and just anyone listening in to really just educate yourself as much as you can with these practical things, with financial knowledge. I want to expand on this idea. What improvements do you suggest overall, and then what would you say to somebody that doesn't have a lot of knowledge in financial literacy?
I'd say that once again, read first. There's a series of books, X for Dummies, Finance for Dummies, Painting for Dummies, Drawing for Dummies, Speaking for Dummies. I found I've read a number of those books. I find they're helpful because you just want to know the basics. You're not looking to become an expert in finance. Presumably, you're going to be an expert in something else, and you'll devote a lot of your life to that. But finance is something that you'll have to deal with. And so I'd say get a good book on financial literacy. Because if you use those two words and you Google them up, there will be all kinds of references to books that have been written on that topic. I'd say just start by getting one of them.
I totally agree. All it takes really is to just pick up a book and start reading. And the amount of immense knowledge that you can take away from a book is priceless. All it takes is one book too. So yeah, thank you for that. And going off of that topic, I'd like to ask you, do you suggest any other kind of media, any specific podcasts, shows for our audience?
Well, I love documentaries. Anything by Ken Burns, I like. I particularly like his series on the national parks because I'm a hiker and a mountain climber. So I would say documentaries are tremendous. I think anything to do with classic literature, whether it's in a movie like Romeo and Juliet, whether it's the actual book. I think Russian novelists in the 1800s are phenomenal. So you got Leo Tolstoy, you got Fyodor Dostoevsky, you got Alexander Pushkin, you got Anton Chekhov. They all wrote amazing books.
Great. Thank you so much for those suggestions. I highly recommend everyone listening in right now to check out those suggestions if you have the time. Really great resources right there. Great. And then I have one more question before we officially conclude this episode. If you had to distill one key principle for success in investing and leadership, what would it be?
One word.
One word. One key principle.
Determination.
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 That'd be my one word. I mean, there's other words, but that's without determination, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I agree 100%. It really, a lot of times it really is about kind of the mindset that you have. And if it's something you really want, you gotta be determined. And
It's like gas in the tank.
100%.
And thank you, speaking of determination, thank you so much for having me with you today, Francisco.
Of course. Thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with us and be on our podcast. This is great information, a lot of valuable resources that Professor Simon has just given, and I highly suggest everyone tuning in right now to look into these topics more, do some research, check out the resources that Professor Simon has just given. And thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today.
You're welcome.
And that officially concludes episode number 2 of Financial Frontiers with Bruin Finance Society. Until next time.
Thank you, Francisco.